What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down another Super Speedway race, the Ambetter Health 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This will take place on Sunday, February 25th at around 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And the weather is cleared this weekend, so no issues like we had at Daytona. But anyway, if this happens to be your first time here, what's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturday, live streams on Sunday, playing at around 12 p.m. Eastern. So come in, say hi. Usually always a good time. Also, shout out to Shark Killer who won last week's comment contest. This week it's going to be which driver do you think leads the most laps and how many, and the one closest will win. Cash prize, I'll send it to you. Just make sure you comment down below before the race starts. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and let's dive right into it. Alright, so moving on to the strategy portion of this video. It's going to be probably pretty important this week because Atlanta's a very weird track. If you were looking at past history for Atlanta, you got to stop after the past 4 races because all of that data can be thrown out the window. This used to be a cheese grinder of a track. Kevin Harvick would dominate the whole race, Harvicking around the bottom of the track. Those days are long gone for multiple reasons. One, because they reconfigured the track, and Kevin Harvick has retired. So this is pretty much a super speedway the way they run it. Now, it's quite narrow, so I wouldn't say passing is as easy. And also, we've seen the roster construction for this type of track not exactly match up to our typical super speedway builds, because we have seen the front row optimal before 1 and 2 with place differential. We have seen mid-pack plus full place differential optimal. I believe last year we saw Joey Logano on the pole. He was optimal, led a lot of laps, and won the race at the end. So it's certainly a bit of a mixed bag. For me personally, I'm recording this portion before practice and qualifying, so I'll do the rest afterwards. I'm just trying to get a head start on Saturday. It's going to depend on how the field looks. If we have a bunch of really good super speedway drivers starting in the front half of the field, I am still willing to play them. I don't think this is the type of track we need to play everybody in the 30s, everybody in the 20s, and hope for a wreck fest. Because we did see plenty of wrecks last year, but I don't think it's going to be quite on the level that we would see at Daytona or Talladega. I would assume it's going to be a bit more tame. I'm not saying you can't roll out a big one or several wrecks and we just trash the field. That is certainly in the cards. It's just we don't have a big sample size, so I don't really think anybody has a good idea of what to expect. So for me, I'm kind of playing this like Talladega, but maybe even a little bit more conservative than that, because at Talladega, rather than Daytona, I'm always just strictly stack the back. Talladega, I'm always willing to take some chances on some of these really good super speedway drivers starting in the front half of the field, which is what I'm certainly going to be willing to do at Atlanta this weekend, no matter where they start. Even if we get a guy on the pole, it might not feel great, but I will still have some exposure to them this weekend. So for me, I'm playing the really good super speedway drivers, and then I'll play some of the place differential to the back because they should be able to come through even if there isn't wrecks. Like we've seen Corey LaJoie come from the back, close to the front, nearly win the race. There doesn't have to be wrecks for that. And we don't really have that many bum drivers anymore. Like the days of Cody Ware, I was going to say BJ McLeod, but he's actually back this week. That might be the one bum driver. But even then, we saw in the dual race in Daytona, he was almost leading the pack for a little bit. So I think those guys in the back can probably get there either way. I'm not going to build for a complete wreck fest, but you can't rule it out either. And moving on to the driver by driver breakdown, you have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, if you want to join the community, link down below in the description or the pinned comment for that. You get access to all the projections for DraftKings and FanDuel. The prop sheet for prize picks, I do have the betting model on here, which I did add just this week. The fair odds on here now, so you can compare that to what the books have to see if you have any leverage. And the ownership projections, my optimizer, my article going over cash games, tournaments, bets, props, things like that. And you get access to the Discord community, which is always rocking 24/7. So if you want to join, prices are very fair compared to everybody else. The link can be found down below in the description or the pinned comment. I do appreciate everyone that joined up last week. I'm looking forward to grinding out the rest of the season with you all. And really quick, I wanted to mention that my old friend Stochastic reached out. We're going to be teaming up on their NASCAR Sims tool this season. It will allow you to simulate the contest beforehand, checking out which drivers have the best return on investment, which lineups look the best. And it's a good way to help you find leverage on the field, which is usually pretty important at super speedways. You can either use their set projections or use custom ones, including mine. And they currently have a promo going on where if you get the first 2 months, you will get the last one for free. So if you want to check it out, I have a link down below in the description or the pinned comment, and make sure you tell them I sent you. All right, so let's dive into it here. We're going to start with the 10K and up drivers. Qualifying just ended a few moments ago, so this is my first rundown through the entire slate with you all. So it'll be my first initial reactions. And obviously, the more updated stuff and projections will be up over on the Patreon. And I'll have my live stream tomorrow to answer all of your questions. And I think the way qualifying shaked out makes this for a pretty fun slate, because we have some really good place differential plays. And we also have a lot of these decent drivers, or even really good super speedway drivers, starting near the front of the pack. So it's going to be a nice mix of either, do I want to go full place differential, go and grab some of these guys up front? Do I want to play Joey Logano, who happens to be in the front row? I mean, we know he's a big household name at super speedways, so definitely going to make builds quite interesting. It does look like place differential is going to be a little bit more prominent than I expected, because I didn't really see this many big names being in the back half of the field, like Chase Elliott nearly in 30th. You have Keselowski, Bell, Eric Jones back there. So builds will be fun for sure. But let's start Denny Hamlin here, $10,500. He's starting in 13th. One of the best Super Speedway drivers out there. If we're looking at the data this weekend, first group is going to just be the track history, the 4 recent races at Atlanta, because anything before that is completely irrelevant to turn into a super speedway. Then we have the next gen similar track history, so all the DraftKings tracks since 2022, which is a 13 race sample size if you race the max amount of races. And this is the season data, but that doesn't really apply here. So Hamlin starting in 13th. I put him in that group where he's a really good super speedway driver. He's not going to offer you a ton of place differential, but he can certainly come out here and win the race. Now, these odds are currently before qualifying. I guess there was no practice, so I'm not sure how much they are going to change. And I will let you guys know which bets I did end up placing. But I didn't have anything on Denny, as I was pretty big on the Fords heading into the weekend. And speaking about being big on the Fords, I did hit them to win at plus 180. And I do have several outright bets on the Fords to win as well. So speaking of those Fords that I have outrights to win, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney, both Team Penske, both very similar plays here, because I think either of these guys could get up front, dominate this race, and potentially win. I hit them both at 12-1. Those numbers have gone down in most places. Not sure what they're going to be like after qualifying, but they looked strong during the Q session, so I don't really have any regrets there. We know Joey Logano started in the pole last year, led 140 laps, and won this race. Ryan Blaney also ran very well if you're looking at their numbers at Atlanta in this 4-race sample size. Ryan Blaney, the best average running position, the best average drive rating. Also, 3 top 10s in 4 races, and Joey Logano has not been too bad himself. These are 2 of the best plate racers in all of NASCAR. The only issue here is that they're pretty expensive. Dominator points aren't super easy to accumulate at these types of tracks. I would imagine, since they're both pretty far up to the front, I think Joey Logano can get the lead over Michael McDowell and control this race for the most part. And he should be able to have his teammates Austin Cindric and Ryan Blaney help him out, because I believe Austin Cindric is also starting inside the, he's in the top 10 as well, starting in 8th. So they should be able to team up and take control, which Team Penske tends to do at these types of tracks. So there's a lot of risk here because they wreck out. That's a lot of points being lost. So they're not safe by any means. They're also very expensive. They're going to have to lead laps and either finish probably in first or somewhere in the top 3 or top 5 to make this work. So pretty risky plays, but you can't remove them from the player pool, because we have seen at Atlanta, you're starting inside the top 10 or even on the front row, you can still be optimal, unlike Daytona. William Byron has won half the races here at the newly reconfigured Atlanta Motor Speedway. 2 wins, 2 top 5s, and some overall very strong numbers. And when he's not wrecking out of plate races, he tends to be able to run up front and finish well. So $10,000 here starting 11th, I would say he's pretty much the same play as Denny Hamlin. So I'll have somewhat similar exposure there, but with Byron being a little bit cheaper, I could see myself having slightly more William Byron. Dropping down to the 9K range, we have our first chalk smash play. I guess most people will probably be jamming in Chase Elliott this week. He's starting in 28th. Very good super speedway driver. He won the first race here, started in the pole, dominated, 6.7 average finish and a 3-race sample size, averaging 54 DraftKings points per race, and overall very good numbers. We know he's a great super speedway driver. If you're looking at the sample size from the next gen car, and it's a 12-race sample size for Chase Elliott. His average finish is at 11.9, 12.3 running position, 2 wins, 7 top 10s, and a really good drive rating. So no reason not to like Chase Elliott here if you are playing cash games and tournaments. The ownership will probably be pretty high, but for good reason. Unless he wrecks out, I would assume Chase Elliott will be in the optimal, or at least close to it. Then we have a couple Chevys here, and Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, both starting pretty far up in the field. So the interest is probably going to be pretty low, especially since Kyle Larson, if you're just looking at track history, you know how bad he is at super speedways in general, but man, Atlanta has been terrible for him. Average finish of 27.5, averaging negative DraftKings points per race here. Average running position right around 20th. And he has a 1 top 15 to show for it. So it's been a really tough time for Kyle Larson. And for Kyle Busch, he's been a bit better. 2 top 10s, 3 top 20s, but they're just starting so far up. I do think the Fords will have the advantage as far as leading laps. So I don't see myself getting the much of them. I wouldn't say they're complete fades if you're going for some Chevy stacks and you don't believe in the Fords, but I'm not sure what the Fords have shown you so far at Daytona and in qualifying on Saturday that would make you believe they're not really the cars to beat. Like, I know William Byron won the 500, but I mean, let's be honest, the best cars got wrecked out at the end. And they're also sandwiched in right between all this place differential. You have Chase Elliott, and then the 2 guys we're about to talk about, Brad Keselowski and Christopher Bell, who we know can run very well here at Atlanta. So I would expect low ownership there and certainly low exposure for myself. And speaking of those 2, Keselowski and Christopher Bell, both excellent place differential plays. Keselowski has been amazing at Atlanta, 9.5 average finish, has 2 top 10s. He's been able to run up front, and he always seems to find Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, those guys to run with them. Now, a lot of times at Daytona, that doesn't end up very well, and we saw that this past Monday, but hopefully that doesn't happen once again. So starting in 24th here, I actually did have a bet on Keselowski to win at plus 1400. Now I'm talking sprinkles, like half unit bets, 0.4, because this can be a random track as we don't know exactly how Atlanta is going to play out. It's going to be nice to get into next week where we have a normal track like Las Vegas, then we'll have Phoenix. So I'd feel a little bit more comfortable placing bets on that. So right now it's kind of sprinkles, but Keselowski, I'm pretty certain can at least at some point be a front runner. I mean, the Fords look strong. I know he qualified poorly, but that's going to make him a nice DFS play. And Christopher Bell, another guy that tends to run well at these super speedways, able to get up front, finish well at Daytona last week. So I have no problems with either of those guys. They're certainly going to grade out pretty well. Now Martin Truex Jr. starting in 12th. I would say he has similar upside to Keselowski and Christopher Bell, but he's starting about half the spots further up. So probably not going to have a ton of Martin Truex Jr. interest because I can just play the guys above him and get double the spots further back. Going down to the 8K range, if Bubba Wallace, $8,800. He's starting in 18th. I would say he's in that similar range to Keselowski and Christopher Bell because they're not like starting in the 30s. They're mid-pack for the most part. Bubba's a little bit further up, but we know he's one of the better plate racers out there. So starting in 18th, I think he's a nice GPP play because most will go to the bigger names in Keselowski, Bell, and Chase Elliott as far as place differential is concerned. You also have more PD guys in this group as well. Ross Chastain's in 21st, and we've seen him be in the optimal lineup, I believe, a couple times here at Atlanta. Then we have Tyler Reddick in 19th. We have Alex Bowman in 17th. We have Eric Jones all the way in 37th, who's going to be extremely chalky. You also have Chris Buescher, an excellent plate racer. So this is actually a pretty loaded range, and you can make a case for playing pretty much all of these guys. I would say Bowman, Reddick, Chastain, Wallace all deserve similar exposure. I would say I'd probably lean Bubba. He's also the most expensive of the group, though, so that's something that needs to be factored in. Chris Buescher will be the lowest owned. And while he is a good plate racer, I probably just won't be able to get to him much in DFS because there's just really no reason to play a ton of him when I can play all these guys starting much further back. And the upside is all very similar finishing position-wise. And then Eric Jones, it's just impossible to avoid. He's starting in 37th. He has an average finish of 9.3 at this track. He has 1 top 5, 4 top 15. So he's finished in the top 15 each and every single time. He is a good plate racer. He's starting dead last, so it's only up from here. And I want to point out, it's not because he was slow. He just lost it during his qualifying lap. Ty Gibbs, $7,800. He's starting far enough back to where you can certainly have some exposure. I'm not going to say he's like a standout play because there's so much place differential that we still have to talk about, but he's certainly in the player pool. Michael McDowell starting in first. Probably going to have a hard time playing McDowell. He's obviously got to be close to winning the race. If he dominates enough, maybe he can finish top 5, but there is so much risk there. Like, I can just play Ty Gibbs starting in 25th. If he finishes 8th, 9th, even if he finishes like 12th, I'd be fine with that. And there's just so much risk with McDowell because if he finishes this race like 13th and only led like 15 laps, or even worse, you're not going to have a good day. So probably going to be out on McDowell there. Stenhouse, another guy, like, why not just play Ricky? He's starting 26 spots further back. He's also a very good super speedway driver. Like, his numbers at Atlanta so far, he was up front at some point last year, then chaos ensued. He has 1 top 10 finish. He can be a bit wreckers or checkers, but if he at least survives this race, no, he didn't survive Daytona, but he should knock on the door of a top 20. And at some point, we'll probably see him up front, and you just got to hope your drivers aren't near him. Daniel Suarez, $7,300. He's starting in 23rd. Has oddly been very good at Atlanta. 3 top 10s in 4 races, 2 top 5s. Average finish of 10.3 with a running position of 14.4. If you're playing him, I really wouldn't be against it. I would imagine Stenhouse probably has more ownership because he's more known at these types of tracks, so he could be a decent pivot play. And if you are playing Suarez, I wouldn't say it's the worst idea in the world to pair him up with Ross Chastain just to get that Trackhouse correlation going, because I'm assuming they'll be working together. We also saw Daniel Suarez up front at Daytona for a little bit as well. Austin Dillon, starting in 10th. I don't see a ton of upside here. He has had some awful luck at Atlanta so far. Average finish of 28th, running position of 26. No top 15s. I believe he has 1 top 20 to show for. Yeah, 1 top 20. At Super Speedways, he's not really a bad driver. He has a win. 2 top 5s, 4 top 20s, and a 13 race sample size, but I don't really see a reason to get to too much, if any, Austin Dillon. Austin Cindric, if you're going for Penske stacks, or if you just want to play one of those drivers starting in the top 10 that will have low ownership, I don't mind Austin Cindric. My projections always seem to really like him at Super Speedways, even if he does start inside the top 12, because the dude just runs well at these. He's with Team Penske, and they know how to run well at these tracks. If you're looking at his Atlanta history, he's finished in the top 15 3 to 4 times. He also has the top 5 and the top 10 mixed in there. Average running position of 13.7. Average finish inside the top 15. I would say he's actually a pretty decent tournament play, and if you are playing him, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world if you're going to pair him up with like a Blaney or Logano if you think they just run the show. Bit risky doing that because that's pretty top heavy, but we have seen it work in the past. as far as using drivers starting inside the top 15, paired with place differential. It's not going to just be a bunch of drivers starting up front. There might be a few, but then the rest will be place differential. But I could honestly see a scenario where this is full on place differential with just how much firepower we have starting in the back half of the field. Corey LaJoie, $600 to $800, a bit expensive for him normally, but at Atlanta, he seems to run this track extremely well in super speedways in general. Finished inside the top 5 at Daytona, and he's almost won this race in the past. He was battling with Chase Elliott just a couple of years ago to win the race. Elliott ended up bullying him out of the way, but his numbers overall in a 4-race sample size: average finish of 15th, averaging 46 DraftKings points per race. He always seems to start around anywhere from around like 25th to 30th for LaJoie, and he always seems to come through at the end. So another race where he's going to be starting in the 30s, and I would imagine he's going to be extremely chalky for this one. So you can certainly fire him up with confidence. Certainly a cash play. Chase Briscoe, I would say, is in like a similar category to guys like Austin Cindric or even like a Chris Buescher. So maybe not a full fade, but again, it's going to be so hard to get to him when I can play someone like Corey LaJoie starting in 32nd. Then a couple spots further down, we have John Hunter Nemechek starting in 34th, and there's just way more upside and a bit of a floor with them as well. I mean, Chase Briscoe certainly has a ton of risk. Ryan Preece starting in 20th. He is in no man's land. I can't really see my projections liking him too much starting in 20th. I'll probably have him projected to finish somewhere around there, if not a little bit worse. So I can't really see myself getting much Preece. Same with Noah Gragson, even though he was a hero last week. John Hunter Nemechek starting in 34th. I mean, his teammate also qualified very poorly. I think he took it a little bit easy because he didn't have the same issues and wreck it like Eric Jones had. So both of those guys will certainly be in play. He finished in the top 10 at Daytona. Did well in the Clash as well, so it hasn't been too bad of a start for John Hunter Nemechek in the 42 car. So I'll be playing him quite a bit. Josh Berry in that same range as all the other Stewart House cars, it seems like. Noah Gragson in 15, Chase Briscoe in 9th. Just going to be tough to get there at that starting spot. Carson Hocevar starting in 35th. I would say he's pretty much on par with like a John Hunter Nemechek. So if you're playing a lot of Hunter Nemechek, I would say it's not a bad idea to have a good amount of Hocevar. A shout out to Todd Gillen and Front Row Motorsports. Just absolutely killed it in qualifying today. I don't really think we can play Gillen starting in 4th. I mean, there's just a lot of downside there. And I mean, just give me Hocevar starting so many spots further back. Even Zane Smith in 29th. I'd rather play him. I think he's certainly in play. Daniel Hemrick, another guy that was very good at Daytona starting in 26. He's in a colleague car, and we know colleague cars can run well at these types of tracks. Harrison Burton, kind of Team Penske, like the Walmart Team Penske over there. I mean, he could, if he hooks up with them, he could be running well, but it's just going to be really tough to trust him in 16th. Justin Haley starting in 31st, no longer with colleague with Rick Ware, but I mean, he's shown that he can run well in that car. He's a good plate racer, but I think the upside is a bit limited since he's no longer with colleague. Kaz Grala in 33rd in the 15 car this week. If you're going for that elite Rick Ware racing stack, you could go with him and Justin Haley together. That's something I'm going to be doing, but I mean, they're far enough back to where if there's a bunch of incidents, it can work out. I don't think the ownership will be high at all. So, I mean, you can't rule out any of these back markers. There are certain 30s, they have the place differential, and the ownership will be low. I would say in all of them. I say once you get past Zane Smith or even Hocevar, the ownership should not be that high whatsoever. Josh Williams in 30th, I don't think people want to play him, but he's in the 16 car. We saw Dinger pilot that to a top 5 or top 6, whatever it was at Daytona. I'm not saying he's AJ Allmendinger, but I mean, the ride's not too bad. So, I mean, Josh Williams should be in the single digits if you want to play him. And then BJ McLeod starting at 36. He'd be dead last if Eric Jones didn't have a stroke during qualifying. So unless there's heavy incidents, I can't really see BJ doing too much out there. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. So I hope you did enjoy. If you did, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you want to check out all the extra content over on Patreon, you can find that link down below in the description or the pinned comment. The live stream will be on noon Eastern on Sunday. So if you want to come and check that out, I'll answer any questions you got. Ask me whatever you want to. But if not, either way, I wish you all the best of luck this week, and I'll see you all next time.